Thank you. Live streaming has now commenced. Good evening, everybody. For those who don't know me, I'm Pat Edwards, Chair of the Planning Committee. There's no fire alarm planned for this evening. Should the alarm sound, please leave via the nearest available emergency exit. The two exits are through the glass door behind you to my left, or through the double doors onto the riverside behind you. Please do not use the exit at the back to my right. You can see signs as access is currently restricted by the works outside. Please meet at Tower House Car Park. Members of the public are welcome to make their own recordings of the meeting using whatever non-disruptive methods they think are suitable. I would like to remind everyone present at the meeting that it's being minuted, recorded, filmed and made available to view in live and archive form via the Council's website. If you're seated in the public gallery, it's possible the cameras may capture your image. If you wish to avoid being filmed, it's recommended you make a member of staff aware who can direct you to where to sit. The Westgate Garden gates on the riverside are locked at dusk, so members of the public must leave the Guildhall by the side exit behind the glass door, not out of that one where you won't be able to get out. Could I check if there are any apologies, John?
We have apologies from Councillor Paul Prentice.
And do we have any substitutes?
No substitutes. Okay,
thank you. So the next item is declarations of interest by councillors or officers. And I'm going to ask John, our Democratic Services Officer, to read the generic response that we always give you to make sure that you understand that it is possible that all of us may have had representations from you, because in this case for today, we have had a lot. So, John, could you cover all that? Thank you very much.
All or some councillors may have received correspondence from or spoken with applicants, agents, supporters or objectors, and some of the public speakers may also be known to members of the committee due to their work as councillors. Neither circumstance prevents councillors from participating in the meeting. However, any councillor who considers that they do not have an open mind in respect of any item on the agenda should not participate in the meeting when the relevant item is to be discussed. In terms of declarations received in advance, just the one, which is from Councillor Buckman, who's declared that he will leave the chamber on item 6, as he's a member of the centre in question.
Thank you. Other declarations of interest? Let me take Councillor Thomas first.
Thank you, Chair. With reference, item 6, basically we've had correspondence and photograph kind of evidence from residents. I just want to make sure and let people aware that I may reference the photographs when it comes to discussion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you, Chair. I am predetermined on application 11, which is the 12 Portage Road, Starry one. I'll leave the chamber when that application comes.
Is you going to speak from the chamber first and then?
I will speak first, yes. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Jones.
That's right. Thank you, Chair. On application item 8, I know one of the speakers on application 8, which I've just become aware of this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dixie.
Yes, I'm the owner of the property in agenda item 9, and I'll leave the chamber while that's discussed.
Thank you very much. And I will make a declaration that in respect of item number 6, I am a member of King's School Recreation Centre, but I do not consider myself to be predetermined as a result. So I will continue to chair that meeting, part of the meeting. Thank you. Have we got all the declarations, everybody? Thank you. On public participation, there are 16 public speakers tonight who will be heard immediately after the officer's presentation under each relevant item. Item 5, minutes of the Planning Committee of the 19th of August 2025. Could I have them confirmed as a correct record of the meeting by general assent? Thank you very much, everybody. That's confirmed. Thank you. We move on to item 6, application number CA 2402111, King's School Recreation Centre, St Stephen's Road, Canterbury. Please could I ask Ashley Kynes to introduce the report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. So this application relates to King's School in Canterbury and is for paddle courts together. Oh, sorry. It's King's School in Canterbury and it's for paddle courts together with an enclosure. The application has been called to the committee by Councillor Baldock on the grounds of impacts to neighbouring occupiers. So just for context, this is the site in red, the existing tennis courts, and then outlined in blue is the ownership of the applicant as well. So slide 2, you can see the proposed elevations of the structure. The structure will consist of white mesh panels below a white canopy roof with an eaves level of 6.5 metres and 8.9 metre ridge level, with the tallest part of the canopy being at 9.8 metres, which is closest to the existing leisure centre. This is another proposed elevation with the spires to the north, and again the other proposed elevation with the existing leisure centre to the rear as well. And this is the proposed block plan showing the extent of the development. You can see the outline of the enclosure within the red line boundary. The acoustic barrier will go along the northwest elevation in front of the spires. This results in there being no unacceptable noise impact to the neighbouring occupiers. The lighting details will also be conditioned to only, they will be downward facing built within the structure. And so, yeah, that's the proposed plans. And then in line with the officer report, it's recommended for approval. I'll just go through. This is I'm not sure if this video will work. This is just to show the site. Okay, so you can see the tennis courts here, then the spires just straight ahead. And then this is just a CGI supplied by the applicant, just the visual representation. You've got the highest point here for the tennis courts, furthest away from the spires to the north. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we have this take the speakers next. Our first speaker is Sheila Bolaki. Would you like to come forward? Stella, sorry. You have exactly 3 minutes, and I will ask you to stop at the end of that time. So just to be, you can do what you like, but let's turn it on. We have to turn it. John.
Begin? Okay. Myself, Dawn and Rosie, who are due to speak after me, are here on behalf of the Spires Action Group in objection to the proposal. At the last meeting, we highlighted our concerns regarding the closeness of the proposed structure to housing at just 4 meters, noise and light pollution, loss of natural light, the effect on the adjacent conservation area, and the impact upon community well-being. Thank you to all those who were able to join the site visit, and we raised several important considerations, including the potential of flooding, impact of noise within the acoustic bowl of flats, cleaning and upkeep of the structure, and incongruity to surrounding buildings. This evening, we would like to further explain our concerns, paying particular attention to how the proposal conflicts with strategies set out in the Canterbury District Local Plan and National Planning Policy Framework. Firstly, in respect to noise, the National Planning Policy Framework requires planning decisions to prevent new developments from contributing to unacceptable levels of noise pollution. We acknowledge that a noise assessment has been carried out and that an acoustic barrier has been added in response to this. However, the proposed barrier is 2.8 meters tall, whilst the structure rises to a height between 8.9 and 9.8 meters. Since many of the flats around the proposed structure are above the 2.8 high acoustic barrier, an unacceptable level of sound would likely escape and furthermore be exacerbated by the reverberations around the canopy structure and by the acoustic bowl formed by the surrounding flats. It is also important to consider the difference between the sound of paddle and tennis. Bath Council recently rejected for the second time an application for a paddle court that was going to be situated near residential properties, with noise being a key issue. In fact, the planning inspector stated that paddle has noisier volleys and a faster cadence of ball impact compared to lawn tennis. The planning documents state that King's paddle courts will be open for use between 6 a.m. and 9 p.m. on weekdays, 6:30 a.m. and 4 p.m. on Saturdays, and 6:30 and 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. on Sundays and bank holidays. Hume Planning Consultancy have stated that the operator's current facility on an industrial estate in Ashford experiences peak usage between 6:30 a.m. and 10 a.m. and after 4 p.m. If the King's Schools proposal goes ahead, it would mean that local residents would be subjected to noise levels greater than that of tennis, and which would be expected to peak during unsociably early hours. We hope councillors will hold in mind just how disruptive this would be and the huge impact it would have on community well-being.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm done. Thank you.
The second speaker is Dawn Peerboy, objector. Thank you. Again, you have 3 minutes.
Is this on already? Okay. All right. Impact on a conservation area, environmental sensitivity and sustainability. The site itself is not inside a conservation area, but adjacent properties are, the closest of which being just 4 metres from the proposed structure. Policy HE6 from the Canterbury District Local Plan states that developments affecting the setting of or views into and out of a conservation area should preserve or enhance all features that contribute positively to the area's character, appearance or setting. Policy DBE3 states that design should be integrated into the landscape with consideration to amenity of neighbouring buildings, including overshadowing, outlook and loss of light. For at least 8 properties, the skyline will be dominated by the proposed structure. This would have a huge visual impact on the skyline and local townscape character and remove an important view of the cathedral, after which the area is named. And for those residents not immediately in the proposed structure's shadow, the large, white, unattractive canopy will certainly not seem well integrated into the surrounding landscape. It is not even well integrated into the design of the current sports centre. For those reasons, we view the proposal to be in direct contravention of policies HE6 and DBE3. In terms of environmental concerns and sustainability, there remains concerns around drainage and potential flooding. In response to queries raised at the site visit, Hume Planning Consultancy reported that all runoff will be directed into the existing main drains. It was pointed out at the visit that the tennis courts currently have no such drains and that the structure will have a funneling effect on rainwater, focusing greater amounts of water into a smaller area. Since the tennis courts and Holters Mill car parks already experience flooding, it is surprising that drainage has not been fully considered. The canopy has been reported to require minimal maintenance. However, one imagined that it will be impacted by bird droppings and therefore regular cleaning needed. This doesn't seem to have been considered fully in the planning proposal. The tennis courts on the site of the proposed structure are currently listed as a protected open space, and therefore policy OS9, protection of existing open space from the Canterbury District Local Plan, applies. The policy states that proposals will only be permitted if there would be no harm to the contribution the open space makes to the visual amenity of the area and if there is no alternative site to accommodate the development. We believe the proposed structure would significantly harm the contribution the tennis courts make to the visual amenity of the area, and that King's School have the resources to consider more appropriate sites.
Thank you. Your 3 minutes is up. Thank you.
Okay.
And the next speaker is Rosie Budd. Please come forward. And again, you have 3 minutes.
Yes, no, which one? Right, okay. Light pollution. The proposal says the structure will be covered by an opaque material with no escape of light. Technical specifications give details of fabrics that are translucent, and the CGI image provided by Hume Planning Consultancy clearly shows that the structure is clad in a semi-transparent fabric. Both the National Planning Policy Framework and the Canterbury District Local Plan state that planning authorities are required to avoid adverse impacts of artificial light. New lighting will only be permitted where it can be demonstrated that it does not adversely impact residential amenity and/or long-distance views. The local plan also states that any quantity of lighting for sports use should be carefully considered due to the high visual impact and loss of amenity for residential areas. Given the inconsistencies in technical specifications and reports, we do not think that the proposal fulfills the demands of either the NPPF or the Canterbury Plan. Light and overshadowing. The proposed structure will be only 4 metres from the nearest property. For those who attended the site visit and have seen the Hume Planning Consultancies and our own artistic impressions, it's clear to see how much of the sky will be obscured for many properties, with loss of light and outlook significant. The Town and Country Planning Order, 2015, Policy DBE3 of Canterbury District Local Plan, state the need to consider overshadowing and loss of light for adjacent properties. Balancing disruption and need. There are now several paddle facilities in the area. Breakpoint Paddle Club is due to open in Wincheap in a matter of weeks. This will be no further from the city centre than the current proposal and is situated away from residential properties, with easy parking, easy access and no heritage landscape to impact. There's a planning proposal for a paddle court at Canterbury Tennis Club and 2 further facilities within a 10-mile radius. All of these, like Ashford, are situated away from residential areas. Given the increased facilities and the severe problems of noise and light, impact upon a conservation area, and clear impact on all surrounding neighbours, we argue that the proposal no longer demonstrates a benefit by addressing a need, but fails to fulfil the Canterbury District Plan in terms of safeguarding and improving life for many local residents. On the contrary, it will impact adversely in its neighbourhood to such a significant degree that the well-being and mental health of the neighbours will be threatened.
Thank you. And Alistair Hume is the last speaker, please. And again, 3 minutes.
Good evening. This is a sports-driven proposal that we will repurpose some existing open-air tennis courts at the King's School. Paddle is a growing international sport, a variation to tennis that is much more forgiving, played as doubles, with underarm serving that is appealing to all ages and abilities. 3 paddle courts will be created by this proposal, and 1 existing court will be effectively made into an indoor court. The enclosure of the courts will allow longer hours of play as they will be internally lit, and also more annual playing hours because they are indoor and not weather dependent. This is a significant health and fitness benefit, not only for the pupils of the school, but also for the Canterbury public, as the nearest paddle courts are at Whitstable or Wye. There may be some sort of further proposals that we've heard about tonight, but I wasn't aware of those. I hope I was able to clarify, at least for officers at the site visit, a number of factors. But the main thing is that this is a functionally driven proposal. We've created the enclosure to be the absolute minimum height. As you could imagine, a single span enclosure to allow the necessary clearances for balls during rallies. The lob is an important part of the game, is set to its minimum standards and has been created to with 3 arches and a 4th for the tennis court that minimises the height of the enclosure to its absolute minimum. During the course, the noise was raised by one of the local residents, and in response, during the application, we commissioned a full acoustic report that modelled ambient noise levels. It projected tennis and paddle court noise levels, and the solution, the attenuation in respect to the noise escape, was the acoustic wall to the height that you was mentioned. That has been approved by the council's own environmental health officer and separately ordered. So I cannot see that there's an issue with the noise escape relative to residents, and this will create a buffer that will not lead to any more noise escape, I would suggest, than open air tennis when it's played. It'll be reduced from that, I would say. The other point about the lighting, there was this concern raised, which I thought I'd explained, and it was mentioned about the materials. It is light on the outside, but that forgets about the internal lining that the specification and manufacturers have offered here, that it prevents noise escape, light escape, and we've committed to only providing the lighting when the skirting is fully
Thank you.
enclosed.
You've had your 3 minutes. Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to begin by proposing the officer's recommendation and seeking a seconder. I want to make this absolutely clear that I do this without prejudice to what I may decide as a result of the debate. I haven't made up my mind on this one, and I am doing this so that we have a proposal to discuss and debate. So I propose the officer's recommendation, which is grant subject to safeguarding conditions. Do I have a seconder? I think it was Naomi Smith first. Okay, Dan, you go ahead.
Thank you very much. I'll second it under the same rules that you've just put forward. Thanks.
That's absolutely fine. Thank you very much. So we are discussing the officer's proposal, and please may I open it to questions, discussions, and obviously points of clarification. Councillor Dixie.
Can I ask Ashley whether he thinks the mock-up images supplied by Jamie Westway and circulated to all councillors on the planning committee to be accurate images of the proposed structures?
Thank you. So those images weren't submitted by the applicant. So in that essence, that's why we haven't considered them. The applicant has submitted a CGI image which was included in the presentation, and from the proposed plans, it looks to be the same, but obviously it's a CGI image in effect.
So do you think they're an accurate image of what is proposed?
I think they represent what's on the proposed elevations on the submitted drawings. Yeah.
Where am I? Councillor Dan Smith.
At the site visit, Councillor Mackenzie, I think it was, actually raised an issue about the water, and I think that was again raised by one of the speakers. So just if we have some clarification about the water runoff. Obviously, it's a large roofed area, and the drainage was a bit of a worry at the time. Thank you.
Yeah, so the the applicant came back and said, like in the report, that there'll be guttering and it'll be directed to the existing runoff.
Councillor Old.
Just for clarification, the officer said that he felt that the representation was accurate. Were you referring to the CGI when you said that? Because that wasn't Councillor Dixie's question.
Right, thank you. So the application is being decided on the basis of the plans that were submitted with the application. They're not being decided on the CGI images. They have been provided by the applicant, but we are not considering those plans. We're considering the plans that were published on the website and were consulted upon.
Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I did raise water at the site visit, and I welcome the fact that guttering and piping has now been put into the application, but I'm still very concerned because, you know, we saw at that site visit, and I went there again today to have a little look from the other side because I didn't have time to, but at the site visit, it's so very close to where this building's going to be to those houses, and it's got a sloped roof with reflective material in torrential rain that could like are we sure that this guttering will catch all the water, has the capacity to do so? I'm very worried about potentially approving essentially a waterfall into people's homes here. So can we have reassurance there, please?
I believe we could condition drainage and check it if we wish. So that's just an option on that one. I think we've got Councillor Forrester, then Councillor Stockley, then Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. It's clarification, both in the report on page 6, bullet 4, and in the applicant speaking today, there's reference to light escape. And in the report, it says, the roof and side covering is an opaque material of white colour which prevents light escape. That is written as an absolute, not 50%, 80%, 90%, but prevents light escape. Is that correct, that it is intended as an absolute, that all light escape will be prevented by that? Thank you.
Ashley, do you want to? I'll get the officer to respond. Ashley.
Thank you. So the application does state that it will prevent light escape. There will also be skirts coming down on the side when the lights are on, which will prevent which is part of the condition for the lighting.
No, I appreciate that, but the application and the report both just set as an absolute, implying it is 100% of light which is prevented from escaping. Is that correct? And if not, has the amount of light that is likely to escape or likely to be contained been quantified?
So with the condition requests that a full lighting sort of survey be submitted and approved. So in terms of your question for 100% guarantee, no, but the condition will secure that any light spill or no light spill will be secured via the condition. And if it's acceptable, it'll be approved through that process.
I think Stevie Andrews will also add a couple of comments here.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm just looking at the report and paragraph 15, which refers to the lighting. So it's within the canopy itself, and it's going to be downward facing. So it's been designed to minimise light spill. What we have recommended in the event that committee agree with the recommendation to approve, we have put on a condition requiring a lighting plan to be submitted to us. Now that's asked for details about the type, location of lighting and measures to reduce light spill. If members would require further reassurance in terms of what kind of lighting is proposed, we can strengthen that condition, and we can require information about the product specification, we can ask for information about the intensity, but also how lighting will cease to operate after the hours that we've conditioned as well. So we can strengthen that condition in the event that members feel that would give them more reassurance in terms of the lighting impact.
Councillor Stockley.
Thank you, Chair. I think for a start, we've been assured that guttering and downpipes will be provided. I'm more concerned about what happens to it when it hits the ground, to be fair. So water, drainage, I think we do need to condition that as a matter of urgency. I'm also very concerned about the fact that this canopy is right up to the boundary. There's no way that maintenance can be carried out. I noticed that the materials here are rated in tens of years. So we're looking at a light covered plastic, which is going to be standing there with no one being able to access it, to clean it, to make sure that it doesn't look really atrocious for the residents who are going to be looking at it day after day. So I think that needs looking at. I don't like the fact it's so close to the housing. Time of operation, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. I think that's excessive. Sorry, 6 a.m., even worse, to 9 p.m. So yeah, I think that also needs addressing. You know, while we can accept a certain level of noise because it was originally a tennis court, and if this is proposed or is accepted, it will be something different. But you have to bear in mind that this is also a commercial operation. This isn't the school using this in these hours. This will be open to the public as a commercial operation. I'm also very concerned about the parking, although I noticed that the parking has been deemed by the report to be adequate. We're looking at 3 courts which will be used a lot more intensely than the tennis courts that are currently placed there. They'll be used all weathers, day and night, as it appears. So the parking is also an issue. I'm not convinced that there's sufficient parking or enough attention has been paid to that parking. So all in all, I did the site visit. The buildings that are close within meters of this structure some of them are in a horseshoe shape, which is going to make sound a major issue. I don't think this has been well thought out. I like the idea of it being moved to somewhere like an industrial estate. That makes a lot of sense. But personally, I think anybody buying a house with this construction in front of you, that's fair enough. But to buy a house with the views of the cathedral and then have this whacking great big structure stuck in front of you, I don't think is fair or reasonable. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start with the drainage. I work outside all the time, every day, and basically we are definitely getting freak weather where we get massive amounts of rain and massive amounts of dry spells. Now, when we get a massive amount of rain, we get flooding. Now, if you add in to the system, and if this is going into the sewage system, because I don't think we've got a separate system here, so you're adding more into the sewage system that we're trying to avoid. So when we build new sites, if this was a new site, this wouldn't be happening because it'd have to be on continuation tanks. So you've got a mass area that's now accessing more storm rate directly into, if there is a drainage system there, it doesn't sound like there is. If they're going to put one in, that's going to add more to the sewage system, which is going to add more to Stodmarsh. I know it's not foul water, but it's still blocking the system, and we will end up with more flooding. Option 1. I can't really disagree with everything that the first speaker was on about. The noise, as Councillor Stockley says, there's going to be an extension because you've got tennis courts at the moment. They're going to be, I haven't seen them being used. I'm not saying they're not used, but they're obviously not used once it gets dark in the evening and stuff like that. So there is a limit and a rest to where residents live. So they're going to be impacted on that with extra noise, and even with car movement. You're going to have extra noise with cars and stuff like that. It is impacting on a conservation area. I'm assuming because the area is not actually in the conservation area, so we may not be allowed to consider that. The parking, if you've got, at the moment, you've got 2 ploughs and a tennis court. If you've got 3 tennis courts, that's 6 people, 9 people. If you've got a paddle, if you've got 4 people each side, doubles, it's doubling up. So you've got more cars coming in. Therefore, you've got to have more cars coming out onto that main road, which is always congested. So we do have to consider highway mitigation. So that's going to be an issue. And the height, it's intrusive, it's overbearing. I try and put myself in the resident's situation, and fortunately, what backs onto my property is allotments. And if, for instance, decided to put a paddle into there on this scale, it would be so overbearing in my own property that, you know, I'd be in the same situation as the residents that live nearby now. So I'm really not sure if I can support this application, and I just think it's too much. We have been sent emails with the images. I've seeking legal permission. I am allowed to mention them, that we've received them, whether they're correct or anything. It's just a complete eyesore. You know, so intrusive and so ugly. If this was a brick building, we would not be allowing this. And it's still going to be, it's a temporary structure for 10 years plus. So, and then the canopy is going to be replaced because what's inside there is basically a glass building. So they'll take the canopy down and perhaps replace the canopy in 10 years' time. So is that another 10 years of a temporary building, making it 20 years? So it's just an eyesore. I can only reference the ones we've got in the rugby club in Whitstable. Yeah, and that's out of the way. It's not intrusive to anybody. It's possibly a good idea in the wrong location. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Next person is Naomi Smith, Councillor Naomi Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I'm concerned about the decibels and the sound on this. I mean, I am, like fellow councillors have said, I mean, it does seem a massive lump right bang next to housing. But the sound levels talk about this a minimum of 2.4 metres high. You know, an acoustic barrier has to be at least 2.8 metres high to reduce the increase in decibels that this paddle court has created. And it's an increase from what is already there to over 50, which is above the criteria threshold, an excess of the criteria threshold. I'm sorry, I don't really understand all of this, but basically it's going to be loud. I did hear that it was opening from 6:30 a.m. through to 9 p.m. And with it being slightly less on Sundays, that seems a lot. That's a lot of paddle whacking going on. And it is a whack. I mean, I don't understand that if you've got the acoustic barrier at 2.8, but you've got this big canopy above it that's going at 9 metres high, just under 9 metres high, that the sound won't go up. I mean, and that you would hear it anyway. Also, this big membrane roof, when we look at the water runoff, if I've got a massive roof on my home, and when it rains, my gutters scoosh and they overflow and they go quite rapid. And I can see this happening with this because you've basically got this massive taut membrane and the noise that the rain would make as well on a membrane roof. It could be just like a drum going off. I just think it's, I absolutely get the benefits of paddle. I think this one's in the wrong place. Thank you.
I just want to ask a couple of questions, if you don't mind, just of Stevie, just a second. Yeah, we're just debating whether to try and, at what point to try and pull it together, but I think we'll take any other speeches first. So Councillor Jones, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Having listened to my colleagues, I would agree, obviously, with Naomi Smith's comments about it being in the wrong place. I'm not against paddle. I think it's a great activity and all the community benefits that comes with. But the thing what obviously concerns me, apart from the flooding, is the sound. I mean, I've lived in a high-rise building on the 10th floor, and you wouldn't believe the noise on the 10th floor. You could literally hear a pin drop, and whereas it's completely different to the sound. The sound travels up, and to have it open the hours what I suggested, and I just think for me that is unreasonable. The other thing is regarding the acoustic barrier and the height how is that checked, and when that deteriorates, how is that going to be replaced? Will it be replaced? I mean, I don't know what its life is, if you know what I'm saying. So of the acoustic barrier, because obviously with the weathering and we get these days, is it to stand up to that? I mean, I don't know. I'm not a technician, but it sounds to me that that's a really big concern to have a relatively peaceful area. I know they play tennis there. It's a completely different sort of ball game, literally, and the noise that makes. But then there is respite from that, you know. But it's that constant bang, 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 and going late into the evening. You feel that you'd never get away from it. I'm not against paddle. I think it's a great thing for not people like me. I'm not fit enough to play it, but I have a real concern that this huge, big, overbearing building is, for me, also really out of character for that area. We have a facility there at the moment, which is tennis, which meets the needs of a community as well. I just feel that it's just in the wrong place. That's how I feel. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bothwell.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I tend to agree with my fellow councillors. I think it's the right building for an increasingly popular sport, but it's in the wrong place. It's far too close to the existing houses. It will have an overbearing impact on their outlook. And I'm also worried about the noise. So it's very difficult for me to support this application. Thank you.
Thank you. I think what we will do, I'll ask Stevie Andrews to make a summary of a few points that she's made in response to what you've said now, and then we'll review where we are. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Chair. So please correct me if I'm wrong, but from the discussions that I've heard from councillors, I see there being five key points really. So if I just summarise each one, if I say what I consider the key points to be, and then I'll go into a bit more detail on them. So the first being drainage and the impact of surface water runoff on flood risk. The second is the level of parking provision for the paddle courts. The third, lighting. So that's linked to the impact on the conservation area, but also the impact on neighbours. Fourth issue being noise, so the noise generated by the use and also the hours of operation that's been recommended by condition. And more generally, the impact of the development on the conservation area and living conditions of neighbours. Have I captured everything? Or have I missed something?
Councillor Thomas.
Sorry, Chair, if I may. Impact on that road. Traffic coming in and out. It's going to be horrendous.
Councillor Dan Smith, did you want to come in?
No, David just said what I was going to say.
Okay, fine. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, great. So taking each point in turn then. So in terms of drainage, now understand the concerns from members about surface water runoff. What we can do is attach a condition requiring details of a sustainable drainage system to be submitted to us before development starts. So that's something that we can attach if members feel that information is required before the development starts. In terms of parking, the access is as existing, and there is no increase in the level of sports provision on the site. The 3 tennis courts are being repurposed, so to speak, so there's no increase in sport provision there. So on that basis, the existing provision is acceptable and in line with the parking standards in the local plan. The third, in terms of lighting, I think I touched on this before. We have recommended a lighting plan to be submitted by condition, but we can strengthen the requirements of that condition. So more information is required up front before the development starts and before we approve any lighting plans. We can amend that condition to cover those points. In terms of noise, now a noise impact assessment was carried out with the application and that was reviewed by our internal environmental health team. Now the nature of the sport is different to tennis. It's different equipment, it's different game, it's a different court. So the noise impact assessment does acknowledge that there will be an increase in the level of noise that is generated by the development. It has looked at the existing and proposed noise levels in terms of worst case scenarios. That's what's required in noise impact assessment, so we can fully understand what the impact is going to be. There is an increase inevitably, and that's what the noise impact assessment acknowledged. And what the recommendation was is this 2.8 metre high acoustic fence is put in place at the point nearest to the neighbours to mitigate that impact. As I said, that's been reviewed by our environmental health team, and they're satisfied that that acoustic barrier does mitigate the impact as a result of the increase in noise. In terms of obviously impact on the conservation area, that has been considered. We did consult with our heritage team, and they did look at the impact on the adjacent conservation area and whether the development would preserve or enhance the adjacent conservation area. They raised no objection. They felt that the lightweight construction and the context of the site with the neighbouring recreation centre being on the site, they didn't feel that there would be harm to the conservation area, that baseline would be preserved. So I think I've covered everything, but please let me know if I've missed anything or if there are any further questions.
I think I've got several people now. Councillor Mackenzie, I think, was the first. No? Councillor Stockley.
Thank you. Stevie, point 2, parking. You mentioned the fact that the court number remained the same. I'd like to point out that the usage of these courts will be vastly increased, i.e. 6 a.m. We've had from witness testimony that that is one of the busiest times of the day, and also at night, whereas at the moment these courts are not used in those periods. So although the number of courts remain the same, their usage will be vastly increased. So I think you need to look again at parking. Thank you.
No, Ms. Smith, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. The thing that is actually it's the increased intensification of the usage, which not only is the parking going to be increased and the swap over of the parking, because you'll have 3 times 4 people, that's 12 cars turning up every hour on the hour or whatever. I don't know how long you play for, but also it's the increase in noise during that time. So whilst they've got the acoustic barriers, the noise is going to be constant. It's going to be from 6:30 a.m. through to 9 p.m. all the time, which I just feel is wearing for anybody who lives adjacent to it.
I'd like to make a couple of comments. Although I do think that Stevie has outlined the 5 points, I'm not sure how clearly we understand as a committee as a whole that it means that several of those don't really pass muster as planning reasons for rejection, which is not to say I'm trying to encourage people not to reject it, but I do think we need to be clear about what will stand up. And I personally think that the impact on living conditions, outlook on neighbouring properties is the one that we think will stand up. So I think that if we're adding any more into that was the one that and the other one was the harm to the conservation area. Now that's because it's not actually in it, that it was a moot point. It wasn't dealt with in that way in the report, but it is adjacent. And I do think that the outlook and the impact on living conditions does constitute a level of harm. So what I'd like to do is concentrate on what we can use and probably accept that we have checked out the noise and the light pollution and that we could further condition those things. And so I think we need to be clear about what reasons we're using here. Does anybody want to add any others to this? Okay, I've now got Councillor Thomas and then Councillor Dan Smith.
We are the planning committee. We are always constantly told that we can only vote on what is in front of us. Now, I know Stevie is putting in conditions and we can mitigate this and mitigate that. When it comes to the flooding, the only mitigation is you can put it into drainage. But actually, as I've said earlier, you're adding to Stod Marsh, you're adding to the pollution, you're adding to the storm drainage, you're adding to an environmental issue, as far as I'm concerned, because we are having the climate change is changing, and we are having not rain, we're having monsoon amounts of rain for maybe 10 minutes, and it's impacting on that. It can bring down trees, it bring down guttering. I'm amazed sometimes when I'm out and have to run to the van to get shelter. I think the main thing we're looking at here, and as it comes to the highways, we have got, as Councillor Naomi Smith has said, there's the extension of the hours and the extension of play. You're looking at apples and pears. I mean, it's completely different. You've got so much more traffic moving in coming into the site, traffic moving coming onto the site, more parking. Again, I've noticed the one in Whitstable, there's definitely more movement of vehicles, and you extend the hours, you extend the movement of vehicles, and it's not on that road normally, and you're going to be adding to it. But I do think the main issue we have here is that it is overbearing, impacting on the neighbours, as you said, and it does have an effect on a conservation area. And people buy property in a conservation area, they have to live with the rules of living in a conservation area. And I know, living in Herne Bay, I get lots of residents ringing me up about little minor things, and they can't even change a window without getting planning permission. Some issues, and now no, you can't change your windows to PVC, but we can put a massive construction of a paddle court in your back garden. Thank you.
Yeah, that was the points that we were talking about, wasn't it? I think Dan Smith.
Thank you very much, Chair. Actually, very similar to Dave Thomas. But Stevie mentioned a condition for the drainage. I think if you do such a thing, then you really need to look at the increase in rainfall over the last decade with a projection of where it will be over the next couple of decades, because we have had an increase in this downpour, as David mentioned, key moment downpours. And so you need a massive overcapacity to accommodate that, although it won't be used for huge chunks of the time. When you have sunny weather, when it is needed, it will be needed. Otherwise, you're going to get a surface drainage problem as well as mentioned, sewage and so on. So I do think that needs to be looked at. If you were going to condition it, you'd need to have that flex built into any such condition. And I also agree with the highways point. I think it's always worth mentioning perhaps also that a lot of this is going to actually run through the rush hour on the road outside, which is probably the worst possible time for traffic movements.
Just 1 second, just checking a couple of points. We just want to summarise. I appreciate the points that Councillor Thomas has made about we are the planning committee and we do understand about some of these issues, and I do agree. However, we do have to look at the reasons that we are talking about here. So I'm just going to ask Stevie Andrews to summarise where we are with, we're reiterating what we said earlier, but clarifying where we actually are with the argument, if you can bear with me, because it will sound, sorry audience, it will sound quite similar. So we just have to go over it once more. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Chair. So as members are aware, when we're making a decision on a planning application, we must ensure that we've acted reasonably when we've been making that application, because the applicant has the right to appeal, and we need to defend our decision on appeal to an inspector. And if we do lose an appeal, then we are at risk of costs. So we do need to factor that into our decision and make sure that we put our best foot forward and make the best case possible that we can defend at appeal. And what that means is any decisions we make, we must ensure that they're evidence-based as well. Because we can, if we have been found to have acted unreasonably by an inspector and to have put the applicant to unnecessary cost in making the appeal, then we are liable to pay costs back. So just going from that point, so again, I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, but it looks like there are 5 concerns that the members have with this scheme. So I have drainage being 1, parking being 1, loss of outlook to neighbouring properties being 1, the impact of the structure on the conservation area being 1, and the noise impacts on the neighbours. Sorry, Keith put his hand up.
Sorry?
Keith put his hand up. Did you want to check what point?
Yeah, Councillor Bothwell, please come back.
I think another item was overbearing impact, not just the view from the neighbours, but the overbearing impact on the neighbours. I think that, to my mind, that is the most crucial objection to it.
Yes, I think we have clearly got that concern. Thank you.
Okay, so if I take the first one first, being drainage, now this isn't in a flood risk area. And on schemes where we have concerns about drainage or we require drainage information, we usually condition that. So on that basis, if we went to appeal on this and this was raised as an issue, an inspector is more than likely to require that detail by condition. It's a standard condition that we've used on many permissions in the past where we've required that detail up front. Again, we have no evidence that this is going to cause a surface water impact. The evidence that we do have is this is not in a flood risk area, and that there is the potential to condition that information. In terms of parking, again, we need to make sure any reason is evidence-based. It's an existing recreation ground. It's an existing access. The level of sports provision isn't increasing. The area of hard standing isn't increasing. It's using 3 tennis courts to provide a sports facility. I think we would struggle to defend a reason for refusal on that ground without any evidence to justify that. In terms of noise, as I said before, we have a noise impact assessment that has looked at the potential increase in noise levels generated by the proposed paddle use. That has acknowledged there will be an increase in noise level, and it's proposed mitigation that would offset that noise impact. We've consulted with our environmental health team and they've raised no objection. So again, without any evidence to the contrary, I think that may be a difficult ground to defend on appeal. But turning to outlook / overbearing impact on neighbours and the impact on conservation areas, That obviously is subjective. And so I think if the application was to be refused, then probably our strongest grounds for refusal would be the loss of outlook and the harmful impacts of the conservation area. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Naomi Smith wants to come back in. Thank you, Naomi.
Yeah, it's the intensification needs to be considered as well. You know, the fact that currently it's tennis courts that get played on during daylight and during the summer. People don't play in the winter. And this is just a completely different, like somebody says, it is, you know, it's apples to pears. It's a completely different usage. And that's, I think the intensification has an impact on the neighbours. And surely that needs to be considered.
So just a second. So just in response to that, we could again start talking about amending hours if we were concerned about the length of the time. I think these just the hours that the facility is open anyway. So I think that's why they're where they are at the moment. Councillor Stockley.
Thank you, Chair. I fully accept what Steve is saying, and I understand that the reasons we need to give have to be as watertight as we can make them if we are to refuse this application. But I think that whilst the main reason is, as stated, the overbearing nature of the structure, I think the other reasons should be mentioned, because although they may not stand up individually or singularly, they are certainly a contributory factor. And I feel that if we rely solely on one overbearing, I can't believe an inspector standing there looking at this thing, and I know full well they're not going to stand there and look at it, would say that this was okay, because I think we owe it to our residents. This is not okay, in my view, and I don't really mind how it's worded legally. It's not okay, and there are various reasons why it isn't okay. Thank you.
I mean, I think we've got quite a bit of information on these. So I think we are talking about impact on living conditions, outlook on neighbouring properties. We're using the word overbearing. I think Councillor Bothwell put that one in, and I think we can keep that one in. And also the impact on the conservation area. So I think that's solid, and I don't think it misses out elements of what people have discussed. And I think we should check that we agree that that does cover it. Councillor Thomas.
Thank you for allowing us to come back, Chair. On page 18, parking on highway safety, have we not consulted this application with KCC, or am I missing something? Because the way it looks in the report, it's just an officer's opinion.
Councillor Mackenzie, before we come back to your point, let's just see, can we just have all the points and try and get to a summary? I've been trying to summarise for a little while, and I think it is quite important that we do. We've got quite a lot of other cases to deal with. So can we have all the points on the table, please? Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie.
Well, quite conveniently, Chair, I was about to ask whether we could move to the vote. That's why I had my hand up, because I think we all kind of have our position now.
So, Councillor Thomas, I think what we... Sorry. Yeah. So the answer to your question is that Kent Highway said it didn't warrant their involvement because there's no alteration to the entry and exit to this section. And also, as Stevie Andrews has said, this is not actually expanding the entire place. You know, we are reusing courts that are already there to provide another facility. So that's what they said, and that's what the officer was told. So that's why we don't have a comment from them. So we can't manufacture this. That's the situation we're in. I would like to move to the vote. I think we should. I think the other option is that we defer for more information from officers on all the other reasons. But I don't think we're going to be going anywhere with it. And we have resorted to this before and still had to have, as it were, the final decision. And my recommendation is at the moment that we vote and that we use those reasons that we consider to be watertight, solid, sorry. Yes, I'm saying we've got to vote on it, so that's what we're going to do. Right. Okay, we are voting, everybody. We'll take a vote first, and then we talk about the summarising and getting absolutely clear the reasons afterwards. Thank you. John, can we run to the vote? Yeah, I need to clarify the vote. So we are voting on the officer's recommendation to grant, subject to safeguarding conditions. And at the moment, I proposed that. Councillor Dan Smith seconded it. And we need to vote. A vote in favour is a vote to grant. Please can we go to the vote, John? Thank you.
Okay, that's fallen 8 votes against and 2 abstained. 9 votes against.
Thank you very much, everybody. So procedurally now, we need to summarise our formal reasons, and I'll ask Stevie to do that.
Thank you, Chair. So based on my summary earlier and my consideration of the reasons and the concerns that the committee have raised, there are 2 reasons that I feel that are defendable on appeal. So the first is the impact of the development on the living conditions of neighbouring properties. So that's in terms of the impact on their outlook, but also the overbearing impact as a result of the scale, massing and proximity of the structure. The second reason, again relating to the scale and massing of the structure, is the impact on the conservation area, and because of that scale and massing, that the development neither preserves or enhances the character and appearance of the adjacent conservation area. So yeah, 2 reasons: impact on living conditions and impact on the conservation area. Thank you, Chair.
I think that summarises where we are. Is everybody happy with that? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. So we will now actually take a second in case 1 or 2 people want to leave, because we're just
Excuse me, if you're here for the paddle court, the decision hasn't been made yet.
apologise. Apparently we need to take a final vote. Apologise. What are we taking a vote on? Sorry, I apologise, everybody. I need to propose refusal on the grounds that Stevie has outlined. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Thomas. And can we move straight to the vote? So a vote for is a vote to refuse this application on the grounds of impact on living conditions, including all the description that Stevie gave, and impact on conservation area, including all the description that Stevie gave. Thank you.
That's carried unanimous.
Right, we'll now have a 2-second break while people, 2-minute break while people leave. Could people come back, please? Sorry. Oh, they've all gone to the loo, haven't they? We'd like to start. Can we sit down, please? Councillor Bothwell, can we? Can we move on to application number CA 240230, Little Acre, Highstead, Chislet. Could I ask Ashley Keynes to introduce the report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this application relates to Little Highstead in Chislet. The proposals for a single-storey front and side extension, single-storey rear extension. The application is called to the committee by Councillor Carnack on the grounds of the impact of the proposal to the character and appearance of the conservation area. Sorry. Sorry about that. So this is the application side here in the red line boundary. And from this, you can see the proposal in context with the neighbouring properties. The site is set back approximately 39 metres from Boarding Gate Hill to the east and approximately 29 metres from Highstead to the northwest. So these are the existing and proposed elevations. They're considered acceptable in terms of mass and scale given the overall size of the plot. Finished under pitched roof designs and in timber cladding and render. The proposal is considered to preserve the character and appearance of the conservation area, given the varied material palette found in the street scene. So you can remember from your site visit the last time we were there, I just thought it would highlight this elevation highlighted at the bottom in yellow. So if you look, this would be the view from the neighbouring property to the west. And then again, the one highlighted in yellow, and then you can see with the arrow, the viewpoint from the neighbour to the north. And this is, sorry. Just bring that's just a 3D image you can see there of the, you can see at the bottom, the two-storey side, and then the rear, the single-storey rear to the back. And then again, the block plan showing the the two-storey side and then the single-storey rear to the back and the proximity to the boundary line. And so in line with the officer report, it's recommended for approval, subject to safeguarding conditions.
Thank you very much. Rachel Carnack, would you like to come up to speak? Thank you very much. Councillor Carnack is coming up as the ward councillor. Thank you.
Thank you. Highstead is very rural and in a conservation area. This huge extension is totally out of keeping with the surrounding environment. I'm pleased that on the previous item, you all identified how a large and overbearing development should not be permitted in a conservation area. In the area assessment of 1993, Little Acre was already deemed to be out of keeping with the conservation area. It is now totally out of, or would now be totally out of keeping. Do these new plans fall outside the conservation area assessment, particularly given that the increased roof height and large extension will be overbearing in the context of the conservation area? I hope you will all agree on this being out of keeping and will vote against. Depending on your decision on this application, though, I respectfully ask that a condition is granted, if the condition is included, so that the one remaining walnut tree and its roots are protected. That's all very speedy because there's been a little bit of a communication cock-up, and so I am now going to represent the views of the neighbour at Walnut Tree Farm who is unable to speak this evening. The application makes clear what is proposed here is a spice kitchen, which those of you on the visit will have seen. Such is specifically intended to keep cooking smells away from the rest of the house and is not just for storage. If the committee is minded to grant the application, I ask that a condition, this is the Parries asked that a condition be imposed prohibiting the incorporation into this extension of any mechanical or electric extraction or ventilation systems so that these smells are not directed into my house. Finally, and closest to my heart, this is Mr. Parry's heart. In these very environmentally aware times is the issue of the fully grown walnut tree after which my home is named. It is a considerable age and is of a height of some 40 feet. This tree is growing more than 2 metres from where it is proposed, a mere 2 metres, sorry, from where it is proposed to build the spice kitchen. The tree's lateral roots anchor it. Any damage to them will certainly kill the tree and will well make it unstable. If the committee is minded to grant this application, I ask that the building of the spice kitchen be made conditional on a foundation design that clearly demonstrates how it avoids harmful impact on the root system of this tree, including details of specialist foundation methods. I request that no development shall commence until a detailed arboricultural method statement and tree protection plan, together with full engineering details of the proposed foundation design, have been submitted. But I would just very finally just remind everyone that this is in a conservation area. I have huge doubts, as do many of my residents, that the conservation area in towns is thought of more highly than it is in rural areas. And I ask you tonight to reflect on that. And you've made a decision earlier about building in a conservation area. And I would ask you to really think this evening about an overbearing building in a conservation area. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I would like to take the same tack on the basis of the officer's recommendation. We did have 2 site visits, and some of you were at one and some of you were at the other. So most people, I think, have now been to this site. And obviously we didn't discuss the merits of the issues that we discussed there. We discussed them in a factual way only. And we heard factual information from the people that we met there too. So I think what's quite important now is that we consider where we've got to after that. I'm going to propose we grant, subject to safeguarding conditions, on the same basis that we need a proposal to discuss and finally vote on. And do I have a seconder? Councillor Dan Smith, thank you very much. So now I open it for debate. Councillor Dan Smith first.
Got the quick hand up this time, sorry. Thank you, Chair. I think the point made through Councillor Carnac on behalf of Mr Parry made a lot of sense on the conditions regarding the walnut tree and also the mechanical, any kind of machinery to remove scents and smells from the spice kitchen. So would ask that those be included formally. Thank you.
I think I'll ask Ashley to just come back on that. I raised the same point because obviously we discussed the pad effect and design for that. And my understanding is we now do have that information. That drawing is on the portal. And I'm just asking Ashley to just explain to us how that would work. Stevie Andrews would like to do.
Thank you, Chair. So following the site visit made by the committee, a plan was submitted by the applicant showing the extension being built on pad foundation. So that limits the extent of engineering works and digging down, so to speak, to minimise the impact on the tree and to retain it. So it is possible, if the committee are minded to approve the application, then we can list that plan as part of condition 2, so that the development has to be carried out with that plan. Obviously, I must draw the committee's attention to paragraph 15, where we assess the quality of the tree, and officers' views are that because of the limited visibility of this tree from outside of the site, then it doesn't make an important contribution to the character of the area. Obviously, that's the officer view. Councillors can take a different view to that. So we do have that plan, that foundation plan, in the event that committee would like to see that tree retained, and we can add that to condition 2 as an approved drawing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie.
Councillor Dan Smith stole my question, but I would like to build on that and kind of say, yes, please. Can we note that we want to protect that walnut tree? That's something I'd like to propose to the committee. I mean, I don't agree that it doesn't add value to the area. I mean, it may be out of view, but as was mentioned, the house is named after this walnut tree. It's a very aged tree. There's clearly a history there. So yeah, if we could note that, that'd be great. Thank you.
Councillor Bothwell.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just a point of clarification. I've come to understand that this building has been extended over the years a number of times, and I just wanted clarification on what that is and how come it hasn't used up all its permitted development rights as a result of previous extensions to the building.
Thank you, Chair. This scheme isn't being proposed under permitted development rights. It requires planning permission, and that's why we have an application in front of us. So the key is whether or not the development complies with local planning policy as well as national planning policy, and the report sets out an assessment of that. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Stockley.
Could I have clarification?
Oh, did you want to come back? Yeah. Sorry, Councillor Bothwell, to finish the question, yes.
Maybe I was misunderstood. That I had previously understood that if we refused it, they could build it anyway under permitted development rights. Is that not the case?
Thank you, Ashley. Yes, just to clarify, the single-storey extension that forms part of this scheme, yes, that could be built under permitted development rights. It is shown on the plans, but the other development that forms part of the proposal, they require planning permission. Thank you.
Councillor Stockley.
Thank you, Chair. Regarding the tree, I think it's important to note that this was historically an area where walnut trees did grow. So I do feel that this tree has a significance far greater than its current position. So I think it does need to be looked after. I feel if Councillor Mackenzie's was a proposal, I would like to second that proposal. Thank you.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to speak also about the tree side. I read the report and yes, it's obviously the officer's report and view on that. But the tree's been there for a significant amount, a long time before anything else. So obviously that's really the paramount thing. We'd have to make sure that we don't do any damage to that if this application was to go through. But just one thing I just wanted to ask Stevie, when you said in the conservation area, even though it's a single-storey building, you said it didn't need permitted development. I thought anything what you needed planning. You don't have permitted development for anything in the conservation area. That's the impression I'm under. You don't have. You don't. It doesn't mean you can't have it. Doesn't mean you can't get it. You've got to apply for it. Would that be correct?
Thank you. So it depends on whether it meets the size requirements and whether or not it's constructed of matching materials. So as long as it meets those requirements of the legislation, then planning permission wouldn't be required. Obviously, there's been a lot of change to permitted development rights recently. It's hard to keep track. But yes, there are permitted developments for certain developments within conservation areas, extensions being one of them.
Councillor Thomas.
Never has a tree been spoken about so much. Basically, I just want to mention the fact that you have to be careful about compaction. So if you've got machinery going in there, diggers, plants, rotavators, you've got mechanical machinery to take them out. We do have to protect the roots of the tree for compaction. So that's it. Thank you, Chair.
Does anybody else want to add anything? Councillor Dan Smith.
Yes, I think on my first point, I mentioned two things, and obviously we've talked of the tree, but the machinery, which was mentioned by Councillor Colac on behalf of Mr. Parry. Could we have some clarification on that? And is that something we need to condition? Thank you.
I don't believe we can, but I'll ask Stevie Andrews to explain.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a domestic property, and we wouldn't normally condition detail like that. Obviously, if there was a change of use of the building and a use that involved cooking, for example, then we would require details of that. But it's a domestic property, and so on that basis, we wouldn't be able to secure that information or that level of detail. Thank you, Chair.
Which of you said this came first? Councillor Jones, go ahead.
Yes, just want to ask a question for my own sort of clarity, really. It mentions in the application, could you tell me, I think I know what it is, what a spice kitchen is? Specifically, it says in here, obviously there's concerns around, extraction, cooking, it's been mentioned. Just to be clear, I know it's a domestic setting, it's not a commercial building, but what is specifically a spice kitchen? Because I'm obviously would like to know. Thank you.
The kitchen. I think they're slightly different. Sorry, we're having a bit of a discussion about interpretations of spice kitchens, but we're going to get a definitive view now.
I'm not sure it's definitive, but as far as I'm aware, it is an extension of the kitchen. It's just separated from the kitchen, but this is a residential property, so it would be for domestic use.
Councillor Thomas.
Sorry. So he should have, the architect, instead of trying to sound it so flash, he should have called it a utility room, and we wouldn't be in where we are. Sorry, I might have missed it on the report. this is going to be quite a massive construction site. It's not going to be a minor extension to a property. And on that grounds, do we actually have restrictions on timings, i.e. when they can start on site, when they can stop, when they've got to stop site, weekend working and bank holidays, and I think that covers pretty much all of it. It's in the report, I apologise.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So because of the kind of the scale of this development, it's an extension. It's not something we would normally put kind of a construction environmental plan on. But there is separate legislation under the Environmental Health Act, which can deal with statutory nuisance. So if there was operating outside of reasonable hours, then that would constitute a statutory noise nuisance that could be dealt with under environmental health legislation. So that there is legislation that can deal with that in the event that it becomes a statutory nuisance. Thank you, Chair.
If there's no other comment, I think we should move to the vote. So to remind everybody where we are with this, there's a proposal on the table, grant subject to safeguarding conditions, and it's been seconded. We've agreed on, I think we've agreed, but I'll put it to the committee. Is everybody agreeable to the addition of the drawing under paragraph 2 of the conditions? The drawing number we could probably find if you bother, but we'll put it in the minutes, the drawing number, and make sure that that drawing, which is the pad construction for the Spice Kitchen, is part of the conditioning of this to protect the roots of the walnut tree. And if we're happy with that, then we go to the vote, and a vote in favour is a vote to grant, subject to safeguarding conditions, and with that extra point. John, can we go to the vote? Thank you.
Okay, that's carried. 9 in favour, 2 against, and 1 abstained.
Thank you, everybody. You heard the readout, though.
It's 9 in favour, 2 against, and 1 abstained.
Thank you, everybody. So shall we move on to application 8, which is application number CA 24 01925, flat 5, Truscott House, 27 Queens Road, Whitstable. Again, I'm going to ask Ashley Keynes to introduce the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this application relates to 5 Truscott House in Whitstable. The application is for a retrospective plan. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so this application relates to 5 Truscott House. The application is for a retrospective planning permission for a single-storey outbuilding, and is called to the committee by Councillor Cornell on the grounds of the impact of the scale and massing and noise on the neighbouring occupiers. So for context, this is the location of the site. And again, this is the existing block plan with the outbuilding shown in position to the north. And again, this is the existing elevation showing the cladding and the fenestration. And these are the existing floor plans. To confirm from our last visit, the unit will be conditioned to be incidental, as it is in the report, and the air conditioning unit has also been removed. The applicant has also submitted an application to Southern Water to regularise the plumbing connection. Therefore, in line with the officer's report, the application is recommended for approval, subject to safeguarding conditions. Oh, sorry, excuse me. There's just some on-site photos. Thanks.
Thank you very much. So we have several speakers. Please can I first ask Samantha Gurney to come forward, and as with all the other speakers, you have 3 minutes.
Good evening. Councillor Cornell brought this to committee. I just heard over scale and impact. I'd just like to point out that Flat 5 Truscott House is a 3-bedroom apartment with 2 bathrooms located on the 2nd floor of the building. And the size of the house is approximately 115 square metres. The flat has the luxury of a garden, but it does not have the luxury of direct access to the garden, given that it's on the 2nd floor. The garden measures some 40 square metres. The garden room has been constructed there, which measures just under 15 square metres. So in relation to scale and impact, that is less than 25% of the garden space that the garden room takes up. The garden room has a toilet in it. Councillor Cornell previously stated that the apartment didn't need a toilet because the resident could go upstairs and use one. What use is the garden when you can't use it as a garden like anybody else would? Like the residents of the 2 ground floor flats, which also have gardens, but they benefit from direct access to the garden. It's simply not practical when you're trying to entertain in a garden to ask your guests to go up 2 floors of stairs to use the toilet or to bring any food down. It's just not practical, and that is why the garden is there, so that the occupant can enjoy the garden as a garden. It's also a lady in her 50s, as am I, and when one might want to use the toilet, you might not make it in time to go up the stairs to the 2nd floor. So I think it's entirely reasonable for the garden room's construction and to have toilet facilities in the garden room. And the use, I think, is demonstrated to be purely incidental to the main building, which is a 2nd floor apartment. And I ask you to grant the consent for this retrospective consent for the construction of this garden room, because without it, the amenity simply can't be enjoyed as it was intended. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please can I now ask Edmund Sargent to come forward? Thank you.
Good evening. I'd just come at this from a common sense point of view. I've seen the property as a new build. I've seen the garden room, and it is definitely a garden room built next to it. Now, I think when it comes to the look of the property and the look of the garden room, they are of a similar ilk. They're both modern construction. They're not, there wasn't a building there before that has been turned into it, as I'm sure you know. And I'm sure you're aware, a lot of people turn buildings that are in their gardens, whether they're sheds, whether they're outbuildings, whatever they are, into other usages. So they may turn them into a games room, a bar, a sunroom, something like that. This is already built in a way that is in keeping with the property. Yes, it has got a loo, and as my colleague said there just then, you have to go all the way upstairs to go to the loo. So why wouldn't you put one in? That's all I've really got to say. It's common sense. It's built in a way that works with the structure itself as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Is Bob Smith here? Ah. Okay, Mr. Smith, you have 3 minutes from the moment you start speaking. Thank you.
Sorry. My name's Rob Slee. I'm a local resident. I live very near. I'm deeply concerned of the overdevelopment of the local area, most of which has been unplanned, like this one was, and it's adding to the drainage issues in the local area, so that when periods of heavy rain occur, we get raw sewage running along the pavements. It's disappointing that there does not seem to be any written record of the issues raised on the site visit on the 18th of August, where a number 6 objectors were present. We would urge the committee to refuse this application. The issues of over-intensification, precedent and cumulative impact are material planning considerations justifying refusal. Only 4 years ago, there was 1 dwelling on this site accommodating 2 people. There are now 5 flats and 1 detached house accommodating lots of people and lots of toilets. At that time, the council rigorously insisted on the preservation of the open space around the block, but it appears that that has been abandoned. And we can imagine what it would be like if other courtyards around that block built similar buildings. If you honestly believe you have no option but to approve this application, then we'd ask consideration for 2 things. Firstly, in light of the very serious fire risks arising from flammable air conditioning unit, that the properties are prohibited from storing of hazardous or flammable substances. It was quite alarming to see a gas stove in there on the last site visit. Secondly, we would ask for a condition requiring the removal of the macerating toilet and sink. These are features of primary accommodation which are not reasonably needed in an outbuilding which can be used for purpose incidental to the main dwelling. There has been no assessment of the impact of this outbuilding on the sustainable drainage system which was installed as a condition of the original planning permission. Sustainable drainage features a material planning consideration in your local plan. We also asked officers to acquire a copy of the relevant consents for drainage connections obtained by the applicant from Southern Water, together with a technical appraisal of the macerator noise. This does not appear to have been done. Outbuildings like this are a big problem in Whitstable, many of which become Airbnbs. Removing the toilet and sink will eliminate any scope for overnight accommodation and reduce the risk of unauthorised drain connections and noise coming from the macerating toilet and other usages.
Thank you. That's the 3 minutes.
Lovely. Thank you.
you.
Thank you for your
time. Paul Moore. Is Paul Moore available? Please come forward. So I'm just checking because my list wasn't quite clear about who was here and who wasn't.
Got 1 visual, if you could. Thank you very much.
Again, you have 3 minutes from when you start speaking. Okay.
Thank you. Good evening, councillors. I'm Paul Moore and I live at 45 St Anne's Road. I'm a Whitstable resident for over 20 years and I'm here to ask for the committee's help. This time last year, development appeared inches from our boundary. It was neither discussed nor consulted with neighbours, nor approved by the block management company. It became clear that the building contained power, heating, air conditioning, unauthorised drainage, significant space, and a macerator toilet inches from our boundary. As Mr. Sleeve mentioned, the planning site visit last month was attended by 6 objectors, all raising serious questions and concerns. These questions aren't answered in the report before you tonight. Importantly, your report does not address the question of precedent. Please consider whether any decision to approve this application tonight might impact on any similar structures in the other 2 courtyards. Please look at the overhead image showing likely impact of further outbuildings as 2 white blocks with red edging. It's clear that when the apartments were agreed only 3 years ago, the council insisted on open space around the apartment block. So what's changed? Please look carefully at the conditions. This development has created an unauthorised annex with many features of primary accommodation. Serious issues of fire safety have arisen, leading to the removal of a previously undisclosed air conditioning unit. This is precisely the type of unsafe, incremental development that warrants no permitted development rights for apartments. Critically, the applicant's track record so far shows why neighbours must seek this committee's protection from any reinstallation or repetition to ensure that this does not become habitable accommodation now or in the future. We still have a toilet and sink in the structure, providing a ready basis for unauthorised future use. Please look at an additional condition requiring its removal. That's a practical, tangible step that you can take tonight, members. Sorry, I'm being interrupted by the noise just coming there. Could you? Okay. I can't hear myself because I'm hearing speaking there. Please weigh the minor inconvenience to the application and to the applicant of using facilities in the main dwelling compared to the risk of our living conditions. The simple further condition will add significant weight to the overnight condition that officers are already recommending.
It was just 3 minutes actually at this point. Thank you.
Sorry, my time was taken up by that interruption. May I just finish?
No, you can't. You've just had just over 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I was just clarifying my list because there's one person who didn't come. I just wanted to check. So please can I now call Lucy Tregar? Thank you.
Thank you for taking time to be here this evening. I'm the owner of Flat 5 Truscott House. From the site visit, I hope it became evident that the building is not for business or Airbnb use. Potential noise is not an issue as the AC has been removed and the noise from the toilet macerator is barely audible. I would also point out that people in their gardens do generate noise whether there is a garden room in place or not. In fact, more likely to be less so as the sound is contained in the room itself. As previously mentioned, the penthouse, had it been a house, would not have needed planning permission. Loss of open space, I feel, is not an issue as it allows for privacy between the surrounding owners' properties and offers privacy of use in the garden itself. The foul and surface drainage has been connected with due diligence. Both southern and southeast water have been accordingly notified, and an electrical certificate is in the process of being obtained. In terms of light pollution, the room is intended for daytime use, not nighttime. Previously, there was a grey corrugated pitched roof shed. Also, I'm interested to know what it does obstruct a view of. The sky, the trees and planting are still fully visible. The green roof has not suffered from seagull droppings. I can see the roof from my bedroom window. There is a greater problem on the actual patio as they sit in the tree just beyond the end of the garden. I've also looked into the so-called dangerous precedents using Rightmove. There are a number of share of freehold and leasehold flats in the area for sale. A very small percentage of them have communal gardens and vary between 30 to 45 square metres, and one other penthouse on Marine Parade is 70 square metres with no garden. This description for annex is not correct. It is a room that accommodates a sink for washing up and preparing a hot drink. It's not a fully working kitchen, and again, people do have amazing kitchens in their gardens. The toilet is for occasional use. It does not have an antenna or fixed heating. The intended use is for myself to sit quietly in and allow my dogs some outdoor space other than a small balcony. And yes, I would invite a few friends over to sit in the garden itself for the occasional barbecue or drinks. The penthouse is 116 square metres, 2 double bedrooms, large single. Unique in its size and the fact that it has a private garden, not a courtyard, which suggests that it's very small, which it is not, and measures 40 square metres against a room size of 14.4. Furthermore, the only other flats that have gardens at Truscott House are ground level with sheds and have direct access, unlike mine, which is 2 floors up. I would also point out that I could have different types of outdoor rooms within that space, for example, spheres, which I rejected as felt that it would look quite odd in a rectangular garden. I feel I've taken note and acted upon all of the requests from the council, and as said previously, I'm happy to accept caveats as previously mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to propose Dan Smith.
Just before we do the proposal, Chair, I think we had one of the speakers interrupted in front of us all. It would be reasonable that that speaker be given the opportunity to speak again on the 3 minutes that they have to make sure that their time is uninterrupted, as I feel that should be the fair and clear and reasonable way to deal with this matter. Thank you.
Councillor Smith, I do apologise if I spoke too loudly and ended up interrupting that speaker. According to the Constitution, it appears that that speaker should not have been allowed to speak. However, I leave it up to the chair as to whether to decide to agree to your suggestion.
I don't really want to get into too many complications over one particular issue. I think we did hear what the gentleman was saying, and you know, unless you want to argue strongly, I think we should just proceed.
Chair, I think it would be reasonable to ask the speaker concerned if there is anything he wished to add that was commensurate with the time that would have been available, perhaps 30 seconds or so. Thank you.
I think we should proceed. I'm going to propose that we accept the officer's recommendation, grants subject to safeguarding conditions, and I do this in the light of the same comments, provisos that I've made on previous applications, so that we have a proposal on the table, and that we come to our conclusion. I will come to my conclusion at the end of the debate. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Naomi Smith, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Open up the debate. So who would like to speak first? Councillor Bothwell.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have any major objections to this proposal, apart from its appearance, external appearance. I think the existing building, together with the house next door, have been very carefully designed with careful selection of materials. And I think the external cladding of the outbuilding is unfortunate. Not very pleasant looking imitation stone. And I think that a condition should be attached to any approval saying that the external materials of the outbuilding should match or blend with the existing materials of the main building. So the existing building has red brick, it has black, I think, or dark grey window frames, it has white render or off-white render. So I would suggest that the materials should be selected to match those materials rather than introducing the completely new material which it currently has. Thank you.
Councillor Buckman, thank you.
Thank you. I understand that the air conditioning unit has been removed and also that the sleeping, that you cannot stay overnight there. But just out of interest, how does this setting precedents, how does that work within planning, setting precedents for or against? Because we will hear about views, but it's just really for information. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll ask Stevie Andrews to respond to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So flats do not benefit from permitted development rights, so outbuildings cannot be built in gardens without the need for planning permission, hence we have a retrospective application in front of us. Each application is considered on its own merits and it's assessed against local and national planning policy. Thank you, Chair.
Naomi Smith. Councillor Naomi Smith, thank you.
Thank you. We've been over this one twice already and not voted on it yet. I'm always very uncomfortable with retrospective planning applications. I always feel that somebody's pulling a fast one because they might well have not known and realised that you can't just put whatever you want in your garden if it's a flat. Whereas if it is a house, you can put a building of a certain size. And Whitstable is full of them. You know, people's garden rooms. If we do agree to this, I don't object to the toilet because I think actually I live in an upside down house and my garden's a long way from my kitchen and we actually have a rope and a bucket to pass the wine down. Yeah, it's a big bucket. But I do feel that we have to if we do agree to this, which I'm reluctant because I really get annoyed with retrospective stuff. It's a blight to neighbours because they see things, people getting away with it always. But if we do this, I think we need to be strongly conditioning that it cannot be used for overnight usage. And how do we condition that? Who polices that? You know, it's a really difficult, you know, because it encourages people to sort of be taking photographs of somebody coming out of the room in their pyjamas when they could have gone down in their pyjamas and things like that. So it is a difficult thing. Thank you.
I mean, the condition is on page 36 and it is clear. If you want to have a check that you're happy with it, because I mean, if you want to strengthen it, you know, we could, but from my point of view, we now have a really clear condition. It wasn't clear in the first place, but I think we've improved that quite a lot. But just check that because, you know, people need to be happy because this is one of the contentious
points. I think it should say overnight accommodation rather than sleeping accommodation. Possibly because you could fall asleep in the afternoon.
After you've done the bucket of wine.
With the wine, yes.
We can change that wording. What do you prefer for overnight sleeping accommodation?
Not to be used at any time for overnight accommodation. Yeah, because you can sleep,
that's
you
fine.
can have a nap.
Anybody else wishing to come in? Okay, so we have had 2 site visits and there have been some improvements and we have, as has been mentioned, the air conditioning unit has been removed. So I will propose that we vote on this application then. And so a vote in favour is a vote to grant subject to safeguarding conditions. We will change the word sleeping to overnight in that first condition to make that really, really clear. And apart from that, we have the conditions that we have in there. Oh, sorry, Councillor Bothwell, did you want to come back in?
I just wondered whether I had any support for changing the materials so that it should match or blend with the existing building. Because I think if we were considering this application before it had been built, we would have probably stipulated that materials should be selected carefully to match or blend with the existing building, if it was coming to us afresh.
Councillor Thomas, Councillor Naomi Smith, did you? Go on, Councillor Thomas.
I agree with Councillor Naomi Smith. Retrospective applications are a nightmare, as well as I can't fit the whole one of these. But basically, yes, in an ideal world, we could condition what it is, but to change that all now is probably going to be costly, time consuming. I think we are where we are. If we really don't like it, I think we've got to refuse it and kind of move on, I'm afraid. Hopefully, to be honest, I learned something again tonight. I didn't realise if you've got flats, you have to apply for, get representative planning permission. So that's always handy to know. But we are where we are. When this first comes to committee, I thought it was, but now looking at it on site and stuff and having a look at it, it's fairly acceptable. That the outside rendering is kind of the modern approach these days. It's all changing, so it's insulated and it's done. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So I will move to the vote because I've already proposed that.
It's in response to Councillor Bothwell. I think we don't, because this is retrospective on what would be a permitted development if it's a house on an outbuilding, we wouldn't tell somebody what they could have in the garden as an outbuilding. You can build what you want, as is evident all over Whitstable, unfortunately. And that's what I imagine that, because we're not going on the design, it's about whether you can have the outbuilding.
I think there's not the strength of feeling on this one because it's a retrospective application. I think we're all unhappy with that, but, people do make mistakes and here we are where we are. As Councillor Thomas says, please can I put the application to the vote. So a vote in favour is a vote to grant, subject to the safeguarding conditions with the change of the word sleeping to overnight accommodation, so that we're crystal clear about that point. Thank you, John, if you could run the vote. Thank you.
Okay, that's carried. 10 in favour, 1 against and 1 abstained.
Thank you very much, everybody. We'll now move to, wait a minute, I will give people a couple of minutes to leave. If everybody stayed in their seat, apart from Councillor Dixie, so that we rapidly moved on. But I was just going to are you wanting to leave? No, it went through. Thank you. And we move on to number 9, application number CA 25-01233, Linden House, 2 Linden Grove, Canterbury. And I would like to ask Elizabeth Donaci, Planning Officer, to present the report to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. This application pertains to Linden House, a Grade 2 3-storey townhouse located within the Canterbury Conservation Area. The application is brought to the Planning Committee to determine, as the applicant is Councillor Michael Dixie.
Sorry, the screens are playing up. We're just trying to sort it out.
The application seeks the construction of a rear roof extension to create an additional ensuite bathroom. The proposals are the same as previously granted permissions and listed building consents from 2004 and 2010 respectively. The previous permissions have expired, which is the reason for this forthcoming application. Here's a photo of the existing rear elevation for some context. And for the reasons set out in the report, we shall be recommending this application for approval. If the committee resolve to approve the planning application, then the associated listed building consent will be determined under delegated powers accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you. I would propose the planning officer's recommendation, grant subject to safeguarding conditions. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Dan Smith, thank you very much. We have no speakers for this item, you probably noticed that. And obviously we know why it's come to committee. Does anybody want to ask any questions or raise any points?
Move to the vote, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, I will move to the vote. So we'll move to the vote on this one. A vote in favour is a vote to agree the recommendation subject to safeguarding conditions. Can we run the vote, John? Thank you.
That's carried unanimously.
Thank you very much. Does somebody want to go and tell Michael? He'll probably can hear. Thank you, David. Thank you. So we move on to item 10, application number CA 2500742, Oxenden House Farm, Highstead, Chislet. And I'm going to ask Emily Rule, the planning officer, to introduce the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. This application is for the subdivision of an existing dwelling known as Oxenden House Farm in Highstead. It's brought before the committee this evening because it represents a departure from the local plan, whereby it doesn't fall into an existing settlement identified in policy SP4, and it doesn't meet one of the exception criteria in policy HD4 for new dwellings in the countryside. This is the site plan as existing, and the dwelling is circled in red on this location map here, so you can see its proximity to Broomfield. The subdivision of the dwelling would result in a reduction in the number of bedrooms that are currently in the building. So there are 5, as you can see on these floor plans, 1 on the ground floor and 2 on the first floor. And the subdivision of the dwelling into 2 units would provide 4 bedrooms, 2 for each unit. So it would not intensify the habitable occupation. As such, it's considered that the provision of additional housing accommodation in this location is acceptable in this instance. The application also comprises some external alterations to the dwelling and curtilage, but these are quite minor and are considered acceptable given their scale. As such, for the reasons mentioned in this presentation and within the officer report, it's recommended that the application is granted subject to safeguarding conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. We don't have any speakers on this item. And so again, I will propose the officer's recommendation for discussion, which is to grant subject to safeguarding conditions. Do I have a seconder? Thank you. Dan Smith, seconding. Thank you very much. Can I open this up for discussion and question? Thank you. Naomi Smith, Councillor Naomi Smith, thank you.
I think I would be supporting this because it's basically, instead of something becoming huge, it's actually providing more accommodation, 2 homes. So it seems sensible to me, and I can see why it's been brought, because it's out with the local plan, but it's a common sense solution, this. Thank you.
Councillor Dan Smith.
Absolutely agree with Naomi Smith's assessment of that. I'd also like to thank the officer, because it was nice to see it placed on a larger map nearby so you could see its proximity to Broomfield. Thank you.
Thank you. To move to the vote on this one? Thank you. So the recommendation is to grant subject to safeguarding conditions. I have a seconder, Dan Smith, and recommend a vote for is a vote in favour of agreeing this application. Thank you, John. If you could run the vote. Thank you.
And that's carried unanimously.
Thank you, everybody. If we move on now to application 11, application number CA 2500986, 12 Fordwich Road, Surrey. Could I ask Ashley Keynes, the planning officer, to introduce the report? Thank you.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. So this application relates to 12 Fordwich Road in Surrey and is for a 2-storey rear extension, increase in overall ridge height, 2nd floor rear extension, single-storey rear conservatory with external canopy and new gates within the existing boundary wall. The application is called to committee by Councillor Mackenzie on the grounds of flooding, impact on neighbouring living conditions. So there we can see the site location plan within red along Fordwich Road. These are the existing elevations. You've got the front elevation in the top left and the rear elevation in the top right. And then these are proposed. And again, the proposed rear and the proposed side. This above at the top, there's the existing street scene elevation, and at the bottom, yeah, the top is the existing and the bottom is the proposed. You can see the increase in ridge height. And just for more context, there's the proposed block plan showing the extent of the extensions in relation to the neighbouring properties, both to the north and to the south. The proposed extensions and materiality are considered to be acceptable within the site, given the detached nature of the plot. It's considered that no unacceptable impacts would arise for neighbouring occupiers, and in line with the officer's report, it's recommended for approval, subject to safeguarding conditions. Just for some further context, it's the site photos for the front elevation, the street scene, and this is looking to the north to the neighbouring property and to the south. Thank you.
Thank you. We have several speakers for this item, so please could I call Mark Pratchett first to come. And along with everybody else, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, committee, for this opportunity to speak. I live next door but one on Fordwich Road on the Surrey side and take a very keen interest in all development taking place in my immediate neighbourhood. By profession, I also run my own business, Community Stewardship Solutions, advising LPAs and developers across the country implementing quality stewardship strategies on the UK's largest housing sites, including, for example, Ebbsfleet, where I've been there for a few years. The committee report in this instance, I believe, is thorough and clear. And therefore, I wanted just to address the 3 points that Councillor Mackenzie raised to reassure him and others that there are numerous residents living either side of the road, both in Fordwich and in Surrey, as the divide is down the road, and that we support this application. But I want to take each of his 3 points in turn. First of all, character and appearance. I showed neighbours the 2 images that you've just seen just now, before and after, asking them to play that game, spot the difference. And apart from the porch at the front, which has been to be taken down, and the insertion of the garage door, nobody could tell the difference. And indeed, the whole front elevation which was approved just in a recent application a few years ago, the front fence, the hedge, the sight lines all remain. So there's very little difference to the front and to the existing street scene. And indeed, the previous owner was a real keen car buff. He always had at least 2 or 3 cars on the front drive, which actually did block that image of what's in a lovely, attractive scene. So in fact, the new carport behind and the garage door will actually be great for those of us living there because the cars will be put away. The second issue is the flooding. I live right beside the River Stour, which periodically floods, as we all know. And those of us on the west side of Fordwich Road, including number 12, all have our gardens flooded whenever it does flood. And that covers acres and acres. We can't stop it, but the Environment Agency do a good job in managing the levels as best they can. If this was 100 houses, 500 houses, or even one new house, we could talk about the impact that that might take. But here we're talking about a small extension. And when the water's flooding, and we're talking, a few inches deep, it makes no difference in terms of displacement from this small extension. So again, I think this is an irrelevant point. And finally, living conditions. The hedges on either side are both thick and high, and we're on the benefit of one of those on the other side. And given the buildings are also set a few metres away from the neighbouring gardens, providing both physical and visual screening from neighbouring properties, we see very little impact at all. Therefore, I, for one, and other neighbours I've spoken to, fully support this application and its recommendation, and I hope that you do too. Thank you.
Thank you. Julia Campbell is the next speaker I've got listed. If you'd like to come forward, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Julia Campbell, Group Representative. I'd like to read a letter of support of the planning application, which has been signed by immediate neighbours living right next door to the property on Fordwich Road. Their support reflects the views of those who are most closely affected by this application and who understand its local context best. The letter reads, I would like to express my support for the application submitted by the Bikiro family. I have reviewed their plans and accompanying images, and I believe that the proposed changes will not negatively affect the historic character of Fordwich. The Bikiro family have shown a thoughtful and responsible approach by consulting with the council in advance, which gives confidence that the works will be carried out with respect for the heritage and its best interests of the community. I kindly ask that support is taken into consideration when reviewing this application. The letter has been signed by Jane and Steve Smith, 35 Fordwich Road, Brian Alton, 6 Fordwich Road, and Julian Chapman, Tarns, Fordwich Road. I will now read a letter from Mr. Rustem Bikirov, the applicant, who cannot be here tonight. Dear members of the committee, my name is Rustem Bikirov. We have been living in a rented accommodation in Starry with my family for the last 5 years, together with my wife and our 4 wonderful children. We're a big family, and for us, this project is not just walls and a roof. It is our only chance to build a true family home where we can live in safety and raise our children happily. We came here from Ukraine, where we lived with a constant fear that someone would come into your land and begin to dictate rules. Not because it is right or fair, but only because they believe that they have the right to do so. This feeling of helplessness and injustice destroys families and takes away people's future. It was from this horror that we wanted to escape. And that is why we chose this place, to give our children a life where they can feel protected and free. From the very beginning, we did everything possible to act honestly and responsibly. We gathered the full set of documents, engaged leading specialists of the region, and carried out all of the necessary studies. We understood that such a decision cannot be based only on our wishes. It must be supported by regulations, calculations, and professional assessments, and we have ensured all of this. That is why it is so important for us that the final decision is also based on rules, norms, and standards. Otherwise, the very meaning of this transparent and fair process is lost, and for us it becomes a painful reminder of the very feeling we tried to leave behind, when a person's fate is determined as if their land and their life do not truly belong to them. A refusal would be truly hard for us to bear after all these efforts, But the most painful thing is that our big family would lose the opportunity to build a home here in this beautiful place that has already become so special and dear to us. Thank you.
You've had your 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anne Easton here. Good. Sorry, I wasn't sure. We hadn't spoken to you. Please sit down. You've got 3 minutes. Thank you.
Is it on? Thank you. Good evening, Chair and Council members. I'm a mum of 2 and I live about 5 houses away from the applicant, and I'm here to support their application. In terms of commitment to the community, although they're relatively new to the street, they have lived in Canterbury and for some time and clearly plan to make their long-term home. So the purpose of the extension, the project is about creating space for their growing family and putting down roots, so not making dramatic changes. And in terms of the impacts to the street, the rear extension only, and it's not visible from the front, the roof line designed to match the existing house, and also there's no change to the character of the road. You know, also looking at the consideration around the design, the proposed design appears to be modest and sympathetic to the neighbouring properties. It also is informed by pre-consultation, which is always good to sort of have a third party sort of thinking about my audit days and having third party, justify reasons for things is stronger than internal evidence. In terms of looking at the positivity to the neighbourhood, I think that it's encouraging to definitely see family choosing to invest and stay in Fordwich, strengthening the community. For sure, with my children, in terms of applying for family activities, we kind of struggle and have to travel far because the local area hasn't got enough families to take up those activities. And so the sponsors don't tend to want to continue with them. Sometimes they start and then they cut it short because there's not enough intake. A good example of that is the Story Football community, which due to low intake of families in the area, they've had to stop some of the age groups, which is really, it puts a strain on us either to join to provide some of the services, and a lot of us, some of us work full time and we're not able to make those considerations. And so we have to sadly let the children know that they're no longer able to join the local activity, or we have to travel far. So in closing, I think that I fully support the application and that the design is thoughtful and it preserves the look and the feel of the street whilst helping families to settle and grow. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Ben Edwards, next speaker. Hi. Do come forward. Your 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening, councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. My name is Ben Edwards and I speak on behalf of myself and my wife Rosabel Ramirez and various other neighbours in the street that have objected to the plans. We live at number 10 Fordwich Road, directly next to the property in question. and we respectfully object to the proposed extension at number 12 due to the following reasons. The flood risk. Number 12 sits in flood zone 3, an area already prone to flooding. It's a very high risk flood zone area. The proposed extension would approximately double the property's footprint, reducing vital permeable ground and increasing water runoff. When the water has nowhere to go, it works its way into the houses. If you look at the photos above, you can see in the middle, this is number 12, the house that we're referring to, and that is taken just last winter. The picture to the left is number 8. You can see the flooding goes, well, number 12, the flooding is up to the patio there. And number 8 is just around the patio area, around the back of the house. And the one with the football goal on the right, that's my house. You can see how badly it floods. Okay. There's nowhere for that water to go, apart from the houses now. So this is after just 2 days of rain. And this happens on a regular occurrence. And if we have, like Councillor Thomas said earlier, if you have consistent, persistent rain, it's not that you have the water levels and the water table rising and the water comes up through the houses, and many houses in Fordwich have been flooded. Okay. While we have installed flood defences and planted trees and to help absorb water, this large-scale extension threatens to undermine those efforts and increase risks for many homes. The second issue I have is the overbearing design and impact on natural light. The proposed roof height and the 2-storey extension will further overshadow our home, particularly affecting natural light to our kitchen, study, patio areas. You saw the image at the beginning, the little tiny cottage next to the huge house, that's mine. And it's really overbearing. So continuing that, given that our house is a small 17th century cottage, we face strict limitations on alterations to preserve its character, and rightly so. It seems unbalanced that a neighbouring less restricted property could make changes that would significantly do harm to our own house. Our own extension at number 10 was a modest 20-metre square design carefully to preserve the character of our 17th century home and respect our neighbours. In contrast, the proposed 125-metre square extension at number 12 is over 5 times larger. It's simply not comparable. Sorry.
You've had your 3 minutes.
Oh,
you need to stop. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
The agent. Yes, thank you.
Good evening, councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak as the agent and architect acting on behalf of the applicants, Mr and Mrs Beckeroff. From the outset, our objective has been to develop a scheme that will allow the applicants to realise their dream of making Sturry and Fordwich a permanent home for their family, within a community where they have already laid roots, whilst at the same time ensuring high-quality design standards were employed with respect to the sensitivity of the site location and wider setting. As it is considered good practice, the applicant engaged in pre-application discussions with the council in May 2025. In response, the planning officer advised that in general, the rear extensions would likely be acceptable in terms of massing and scale in relation to the overall size of the plot, and that a small increase in ridge height may be acceptable. However, this would require the submission of a street scene elevation at the planning application stage. Overall, officer level support was given in principle to the proposal. From this, we have worked to review the detailed comments of the planning officer to ensure that the design being considered in front of you tonight is indeed consistent with that pre-application advice. Fordwich Road is characterised by dwellings of varying size, form, scale, height and materiality, and there's no consistency of style or type that should be adhered to either within or outside of the part of the Sturry Conservation Area where the building is located. In terms of our proposals, given the size of the existing plot and the ratio of existing built form to plot coverage, the scheme is proportionate and can easily be accommodated without appearing as overdevelopment or without impact to the amenity of the neighbouring occupants, as confirmed by your officer in their committee report. More recently, amendments were submitted to the authority that further improve its overall presence in the street scene, as well as the proportions to the front, side and rear elevations in respect to eaves and window heights. As presented, the proposed roof form is very similar to the existing roof, as well as the choice of sympathetic materials. Overall, the dwelling would not appear out of place, and the proposed changes can be easily accommodated without any resultant harm. And on this point, it is noted that the Council's own Heritage Department raises no objection to the proposals, and neither does the Planning Officer. Whilst concerns have been expressed from interested parties in respect of a variety of matters, this is a household application to be carried out in a residential garden, whereby there will be no loss of any features of notable ecological value. A flood risk assessment has been provided which demonstrates how the development would be constructed to be safe in the event of a flood, and these measures could be secured by planning condition. And in summary, we commend the Planning Officer's recommendation for approval and respectfully request that in the absence of any material planning considerations that would indicate otherwise, planning permission be granted for these proposals. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mackenzie, you want to speak now as the ward councillor? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Firstly, thank you should go to Ashley for his report. It is a good report, and thank you for giving me a one-to-one briefing on this application as well. Afraid you didn't convince me on this occasion, but I do still appreciate it all the same. And also, I want to say thank you to all of the residents on Fordwich Road who support the application who have come tonight. I mean, this is democracy in action, whether there's agreement or not. And I'd be very happy to talk with any of you after this if you want to get in touch and we can discuss this further. The reason why I'm objecting to this comes from conversations I've had with Mr. Edwards as well as Mr. and Mrs. Phillips on the other side, who are the other direct neighbours. I've sat in a Fordwich Town Council meeting, and this doesn't fall within the Fordwich Town boundary, but it is directly next door to them, and they do have that local knowledge. And I've liaised with them on their views on this proposal, and also the MP Roger Gale I have liaised with on this application as well, and he was also encouraging of me calling this in this evening. So the first major reason is the flood risk, and a lot of this Mr. Edwards has already pointed out. So the site does lie within the flood zone 3, which according to the adopted local plan is at high risk of flooding. So policy CC4 in the adopted local plan requires any development to be supported by a flood risk assessment. Now, I'm not convinced by the flood risk assessment, I'm afraid. In the flood risk assessment, they do concede that the impermeable surfacing will almost double from 135 metres squared to 260 metres squared, and the roofing area will increase by 125 metres squared, and that will increase the discharge from the roof. And this relies on a shallow soakway, which won't be very effective once it becomes full. And also there was no mention of a sustainable drainage system. I have personally stood knee deep in water in the floodplain just over when myself and Councillor KG Moses was being shown around by a town councillor. And we've seen the photographic evidence showing how deep that floodwater can be and how close to the houses it can get. And that really does concern me. I mean, the Great Stour is known to have risen a metre higher than its usual height of 2 metres. You know, these houses are located directly next to an operational flood basin. And I think that should be, we should bear that in mind. And then there's the impact on the neighbours. So it has been pointed out to me by the immediate neighbouring residents that the proposed work will involve quite significant construction. So and that will create quite a lot of noise, dust, and traffic. So what I would like to propose on behalf of the residents who have reached out to me is that if this was to go ahead, there would be a condition that construction would be restricted to between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. on Monday to Friday, and 9 a.m. and 1 p.m. on Saturdays, and no work on Sundays or public holidays. And also that there should be a dust mitigation plan before any construction commences, because obviously this is right next to the Great Stour, and we don't want any dust going in there, let alone onto any of the properties nearby. And the final thing I would say is about the living standards of the residents. So a two-story extension, including a solid brick wall to the north, which would overshadow the outlook from the ancient cottage at number 10 that Mr. Edwards pointed out. And the 2 metre wall with full height gates to the south would be significantly higher than the boundary that's already there, reducing light and outlook and privacy for the neighbours. And I do believe these conflict with policies DBE3 and DBE6 of the adopted local plan, which requires any development to safeguard against privacy, amenity of neighbours, and to avoid unacceptable overshadowing. And with that, I will leave it there. Thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So what I would like to do is put the proposal to the committee, which is to grant, subject to safeguarding conditions, on the proviso that we all listen to the debate, obviously make our minds up at the end. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Dan Smith, thank you very much. Open this to debate in the committee. If you have Naomi Smith, Councillor Naomi Smith, thank you.
I have questions for you, Stevie. So this is 125 square metre extension. An average 3-bed semi is about 100 square metres, so it's not a small extension by any stretch of the imagination. Why is this being granted? Why is it being proposed to be granted in a flood risk area? I have CA 2400975 refused in flood risk area 3 in my ward. I've also had an appeal decision, CA 24-02188, which was refused at appeal, which was an extension to a house on Faversham Road. This is because they're a threat from the sea, obviously. But the one in St Mary's Grove, the prior one, was water from the railway track. It's a very odd flood risk 3. But if something's in flood risk 3, I would have thought that we would be looking to refuse it because we refuse it elsewhere. And it becomes a contradiction to our residents elsewhere, and they can't get their plans accepted. So I'd like some clarification about all of that, please.
Yes, Stevie, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So sorry, I didn't catch the reference number for the first application you referred to. Obviously, each application is dealt with on its own merits.
Yeah,
but I did a quick search of the last one that you mentioned.
CA 24-00975.
Okay, I will go back to that one. I'm assuming it's 24 applicant. Was it 24 application?
Yes, it was.
Okay, so in terms of the second one that you referred to, that was refused on the basis of it being located within the overtopping zone. So it was a coastal erosion point rather than a flooding point, as far as I'm aware, having a quick look at the application. But in terms of the impact on flooding, so the EA published standing advice for minor extensions of less than 250 square metres, and that sets out recommendations in terms of flood resilience mitigation measures, and in accordance with that advice, in accordance with policy CC4 in the local plan, a flood risk assessment was submitted with the application. It did follow the principles set out in the Environment Agency standing advice, and it did incorporate the mitigation measures that are recommended by the Environment Agency for developments of this type. So in terms of considering the flood risk impacts of this development, the flood risk assessment has been carried out in line with the Environment Agency's standing advice.
I'll just come back on that because I'm just trying to understand this whole flood risk thing, because the first one I mentioned was St Mary's Grove on the Gronville estate. And that got refused because it could get flooded at the end of the garden. And this seems to be a very similar, and this was a decision by our planning department. It didn't go to appeal, it was just a decision by our planning department. And the point that, the reason that our planning was, is that you have to do a wider area of finding another site, that there isn't another suitable site to do this. Is that, and I wanted to understand that, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So yes, I've looked at that St Mary's Grove application. That was in fact for a dwelling. So the policy considerations are different for that. So for new dwellings in a flood risk area, there must be what's called a sequential test carried out. So so other sites elsewhere within the district at lower risk of flooding should be considered in the first instance. It's a different policy consideration for extensions to existing dwellings in flood risk areas. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Stockley.
Thank you, Chair. So just to clarify Stevie's point, basically the flood risk is not a legitimate reason to refuse this. Also, much was made about the area of the roof and the runoff from. Obviously, from my view, whether the roof is there or not, the rain will still fall. So, you know, really that's a bit of a red herring as well. I can see that it's a very large plot. There is a dwelling already that is equally liable to flooding, so I can see no reason to refuse. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else want to comment? Councillor Thomas.
I don't know if it's down to this committee really. One of the speakers mentioned about a soakaway. I mean, is this extension going to have a soakaway? In which case, if it does flood, it's just going to fill up. So soakaway is going to be slightly irrelevant sometimes of the year, but I don't know if that's irrelevant with the committee, I'm afraid. Thank you.
Yes, okay.
From my personal experience, I own a property in Beltinge where I live, and the garden floods regularly. The water company are not bothered that the soakaway floods, fills up with water and is totally useless. As long as it doesn't go down their drain, they don't care. So a soakaway is what will be there. Whether it works or not is not down to us.
We're just checking if we've got anything more to add on that. Just a sec. Councillor Thomas, did you want to come back in or no? No.
Only whether there's, I don't know, some mitigation for refusal or whatever. But I suppose the point I'm making is this is obviously going into a soakaway rather than into the main sewer, and we're back to the application, first application we had today, where you're talking about separating the water from the system, and unfortunately Southern Water, going off this subject really, they want to separate the drainage hence of a new site. All the new sites, they have, you know, continuation systems and reed beds and stuff where that water goes, sits there and then disappears, and then that becomes a cycle. Southern Water's solution, so they don't have to spend any more money, would be to put new drainage system in, which means digging up every street in the whole district and the whole country.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's if it's a way of getting away from actually having the rainwater go into the main sewer system and it goes into a soakaway, if you've got that much drainage, I suppose it doesn't make any difference. So yeah, sorry, it didn't really make much sense. Sorry, Chair.
Steve is just looking something up, but we'll wait. We'll take any other comments. Councillor Dan Smith.
Yes, just wanted to clarify. There's a car parking area, obviously, in this plan. Is that something we can condition to make a permeable surface? Because I think one of the speakers mentioned the loss of permeable surfaces being a contributory factor to increased floods. And if we've got an open area for parking inside the boundary wall, then perhaps if that's tarmacked, it will make the problem worse. If it's permeable, it would be as it is now. Thank you.
Ashley, do you want to come back on that? Is there any point to make on you?
Yeah, we can add that condition for it to be permeable to the front. Yeah, we can make the condition to make it permeable to the front.
We're just going to clarify something. Just hold on, everybody.
Sorry, just to confirm that there are no changes proposed to the existing parking area. So that will be remaining as existing. We have no powers to be able to require that to be permeable because there are no changes proposed to it. Just to go back on the drainage point, sorry, I was looking at the application form to see if we had any details about a drainage. I can't see there's any confirmation on the application form, but this would be covered under building regulations approval in terms of how the development deals with surface water drainage. So it had been dealt with under separate legislation. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Bothwell.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I have concerns about the scale of the extension. It's nearly doubling the size of the existing house, including a very large first floor extension. So it will have a much bigger volume, both upstairs and downstairs. And I'm just wondering about the impact on the neighbours. It would be overshadowing the neighbours. It would be probably overbearing both neighbours on each side, even though maybe one of the current neighbours doesn't object. It will have an impact on future occupiers. So it's, to my mind, it's having a negative effect on particularly the neighbours each side, where the scale of the building is just so large with a doubling of size. I just wonder whether at what stage does that become a consideration in planning applications when you would object?
Yes, I mean, I wasn't quite sure about that, given the extensions at the back, but I'll ask Stevie to respond.
Thank you, Chair. So the assessment within the report considers the scale and massing of the development, how that would sit in relation to the context, the local context, so the neighbouring buildings, and whether or not it would be out of character with the street scene. So that assessment set out in the report. The impact on neighbours as well, so neighbours either side is also set out, and that considers potential overlooking and potential overbearing impacts. So that assessment's been outlined within the report.
Any other comments? If not, let's move to the vote. So the proposal is to grant subject to safeguarding conditions, and I have a seconder, and a vote in favour is a vote to grant. Thank you. John, if we could run to the vote.
That's carried, 9 in favour, 1 against and 1 abstained.
Thank you very much, everybody. Planning Appeals Report, pages 62 to 64. Stevie, did you want to comment on any points? Anybody got any questions? Okay. We haven't got any urgent business to be dealt with in public, and we haven't got any other business which fall under exempt provisions. So that concludes the meeting. Thank you very much, everybody.